Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I, of course, am Alan N0ZFG, and today is going to be kind of another, we'll call it fast-paced, I guess. But this is going to be a continuance of our XTL-2500 programming series. In this example, we're going to go through the bare minimum needed to set up a P25 or a digital channel in your radio and get it on the air. So before we start, I'd like to suggest that if you haven't already, check out the previous videos in the series, especially the one about the basic connections, as we will not be covering those. At this point, I'm going to assume that you know how to connect this radio to RF, to power, and how to read and write code plugs to and from your radio. So with that said, let's get straight into it here. So I have my Astro 25 mobile CPS pulled up. We're going to go ahead and read our radio off, and we're going to let this do its thing. You can see down the lower left, it is reading. It's a bit slow since I have OBS running. Typically without OBS running, it's quite a bit faster. It's important at this stage, as said before, that you do not power off your radio, do not disconnect from power, don't disconnect your USB cable, etc., etc. Bad things can happen. Okay, so we have our tree of fun up. Okay, remember, as I said in our previous programming video, what's the first thing you do after you read your radio off? You immediately go over here and hit save. File, save. You can either hit the save button as well. In this case, we're going to save it in here, and I'm going to name this YouTube test UHF P25. Okay, and then we hit save. That way, whatever was in there is now saved, so if we screw something up, we can always go back and recover this. Now, let's go ahead and shrink this down a little bit. We don't need it quite so wide. We'll move this over here. Okay, so what's the first thing we need to do? Well, there is no distinct first thing. You can kind of start in either, your conventional, or you can start in your zone channel assignment. You can start in your Astro system. What's important here is that all these steps eventually get done before your system is going to work correctly. In this case, we're going to go ahead and start in the conventional personality. As you can see, we have 3 personalities already. We're going to go ahead and open up the first one. Okay, so this is personality 1 of 3. We're in the RX options tab here, and you can see where it says RX voice signal type non-Astro. Okay, so as I alluded to in our first programming video, Astro is a term that Motorola uses in place of digital. So when you see Astro, what they're saying is this is a digital mode. So in this case, non-Astro would be analog mode or non-digital. We'll go to our TX options tab. You see non-Astro. So this is a analog only personality. Now you see when you hover over something, you see a little the little glasses that show up. That means you can't change this, and that is because your RX options are non-Astro. So you can't have an RX option as non-Astro and then have an Astro transmit option, because that would just be ridiculous. Okay, so let's check our other personalities, see if we already have one. We do not. Let's see, conventional personality 2 is also non-Astro. Same with 3, this is also non-Astro. Okay, so we need to add a conventional personality. So we're going to come down here to our little plus button down here at the bottom. We're going to hit plus. We have now added a conventional personality. You can see over here in the tree of fun, conventional personality 4 is now present. Okay, so first thing we do, RX options tab, RX voice signal type, we change that to Astro. Now, you can set this to mixed mode, which means basically that it can accept either digital or analog transmissions. But for this one, we're going to stick to a digital only. TX options, it's already switched it to Astro, so digital. Timeout timer, as we talked about in the previous one. Some of the stuff we've already covered in the previous programming video. Some of these things will be the same as in analog, such as the timeout timer and things like that. Our transmit power level, we're going to default to high. So a lot of the stuff we really don't need to worry about at this time. Transmit emphasis, reverse burst, turn off code. We don't need to worry about those right now. Just, make sure they're checked. I will say that if you have any questions on this stuff in here, either you can leave a comment, or actually the easiest thing to do is just come up here to your help icon up here. You click on help. You can come down here, click on the thing you want to learn about, and it's going to tell you what this is for. You can click on see more information, which will take you to the actual separate help program. Motorola has done a fantastic job in explaining what all these things do. So just take your time, go through the help software here, and you will soon be an expert, right? In large part, that's how I learned how to do this, was just going through the help, trial and error, changing a setting, programming a radio, seeing what happens, that kind of stuff. Remember, always back up your code plugs. If you screw something up, you can go back. So it's okay to screw things up. Okay, so signaling we don't need to worry about because this is a digital mode. We do need to come up here to Astro. Astro System 1 is selected, digital modular type C4 FM. You can change this to a couple different ones. Like I said, we're just going to leave this as is. We don't need to mess with any of these right now. Astro call. I'm going to go ahead and check the boxes so it can do all the things. And then Astro call ID list 1, and we'll see that here in a second. Okay, so that's really all we need to do here in our personality. So we have our personality set up. Let's go ahead and let's get our channel set up. So now we're going to come down here to our zone channel assignment. We're going to open one. Let's move it over here. Okay, so we see our zone. It says main. We cycle through them. We have our Skywarn, our weather, and simplex channels. So what we can do here is, since we're going to set up a simplex channel here. Now you can do this a couple of different ways. You can set up a zone that's specifically for digital channels. And you can name this digital simplex or whatever, analog simplex or whatever. But since we have one just that says simplex, we're going to go ahead and go into this one. And we're going to select our channels tab at the top. Now you see we have 4 channels in here. Sim 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are conventional personality number 1. Okay, so, and we see our receive frequency. We have a carrier squelch set up on it. Transmit frequencies, these are our simplex, so the transmit and receive frequencies are the same. And you see this stuff here is grayed out. Our PL code is grayed out. Channel spacing. Direct network ID, transmit network ID, receive network ID. This stuff is going to become relevant here in a second. Digital vehicle repeater system is allowed on these channels. Again, that's more for advanced program. We're not going to worry about that. So let's go back over here. Let's go up to the top. We're going to add a channel. We have now channel 5. Let's rename this to, let's see, digital 1. It is a conventional. We're going to go, now remember we set up personality number 4 to be our digital personality. So we have our personality number 4 selected. You can see we've got some extra tabs here: talk group number, talk group, strapping. Okay, these are more advanced. We're not going to worry about those right now. So our receive frequency, we're going to leave it the same as the analog channel. This stuff is grayed out because we don't have a signaling type, because this is digital. Transmit frequency is the same. We're going to leave that. I know it says PL here. Don't worry about it. It's no factor right now. We're going to leave this at 5 kilohertz. We're going to leave this at 25 kilohertz. Some say with digital, you're really not going to. It's not going to matter for audio. So you might as well set that to the narrow band. But in this case, we're going to leave it. Okay, so now you see our direct network ID has now become changeable. Okay. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as a NAC, or network access code. I believe that's what Harris calls it. If you're going to, if you're working off a channel list, you're gonna see this network access code or network ID. Think of this as like your PL tone. It functions in, while it technically functions quite differently since this is digital, for all intents and purposes, this is our channel guard. Okay. So what's going to happen is the radio is going to transmit this code, and the receiving radio, if it's programmed, if the channel it's on is programmed to be listening for this code, it's going to open up the squelch. So as you can see, we can do different for transmit and receive. Typically, we're going to do this the same. You can change this to a bunch of different things, whatever you want, basically, so long as your receiving radio matches. Okay, so we're going to leave this at 293. Again, all this stuff, like I said, if you don't have a vehicular repeater, it really doesn't matter. So we're going to ignore that. We have our network access ID set. I'm so used to calling it a NAC code. I may refer to it as a NAC. So just if I say NAC, this is what I'm talking about, direct network ID. Okay. So that's our channel's in. That's it. We're done with the channel. Okay. Now we need to set up our Astro system, our digital system. So we're going to go back to our tree of fun. We're going to open up expand our Astro system. Now let's just go through these one by one. We'll start with Astro configuration. Okay. We really don't have to do much of anything with this one. In fact, we really don't have to do anything with this one. The only thing you need to keep in mind is whatever radios you're setting up, this stuff just needs to match, right? And typically it will, if you're doing the defaults. Whatever the radio is programmed with default is going to be fine, unless this was programmed for, unless the previous programmer has changed this stuff. Like I said, just as long as it matches. Oh, excuse me. And like I said, you can go to the help menu and find out what all this stuff does if you're so inclined. I will leave that to a more advanced digital programming video. We won't get into the super advanced stuff on this channel, I don't think, because typically in amateur radio, we're not going to be doing things like trunking and all sorts of other fun stuff, or, so we probably won't do anything with that. But let's I'm getting off track here. Let's stick to just getting this thing on the air. So we don't need to do an Astro configuration, okay? So we can leave all that. Let's go ahead and close that. The next one, let's expand our Astro system. We see Astro System 1. Let's open that. Okay, so now we do have to change something here. Okay, so this individual ID, okay, this is going to be the ID of this radio that you're going to program, okay? This is the ID that this radio will transmit with the data stream. That way the receiving radio can decode this individual ID and know what radio is transmitting. Now, let's just change this to... let's change this to 1212. Whatever, arbitrary number. You can change this to whatever you want, really, okay? Um, I would typically stick to like the radios that I program. I stick to like I'll use a unit number, the vehicle unit number in here, whatever the radio is installed, whatever vehicle the radio is installed in. I will assign whatever vehicle unit number it is. This individual ID will become important here again in a little bit. If you want to kind of, I don't know, add to this a little bit. Like I said, on your receiving radio, what you're going to see is you're going to see when this radio that we're programming right now is transmitting, the receiving radio is going to display 1212 right now. We can change that when we get to the call list, and we'll get there. But that's why this is important. Okay, so we don't need to worry about any of these right now. Emergency. This is if you want that orange emergency button to do anything other than, you know, whatever you program. Like I said, you can program that button to do whatever, but if you have it programmed for the emergency function, if you wanted to have an emergency frequency and the radio to do certain things during the emergency event, this is where you would come to change it. You would check this box and adjust your settings accordingly. We're not going to do anything like that now. Like I said, this is going to be a basic programming. So we don't need to do anything right here. This is to make sure all your radios match, basically. Okay, so we've set our radio ID. It's typically a good idea to, you know, start open up a Microsoft Notepad or something, or write this down so you know which radio has what ID. That way you can craft your contact list or your call list appropriately. Okay, so we've got that done. That is actually pretty much it. At this point, you can write your radio, and it will now function in digital mode, and you will see the radio IDs on your display when you're transmitting and receiving. So, at this point, you know, like I said, you could write, first you want to save it. Save it to a different file name, right? Because you don't want to overwrite the file you just saved, the one you just read off of it. So change the file name, and then go ahead and write it to your radio and see if it works. At the moment, I don't have a second UHF P25 ready here to test with, but this is all you need to do to get this thing to function on a simplex channel. On P25, and you'll be good to go. If you wanted to access a repeater that's P25, you're just going to set in your offset for your frequencies. Depending on the repeater that's being used, you may have to set up repeater access on this. And like I said, you'll want to reference the help section in your CPS to guide you through that. It's really not too bad. And like I said, that will depend on the repeater you're trying to access and the settings that it has in it. So you'll want to contact the caretaker of that particular repeater to figure out what you need to set to access that repeater. Okay, so that's done. So what if you don't want, let's say you're receiving a transmission from another radio on this digital channel. Let's say you don't want to see just their ID number because that's kind of cryptic, right? You want to see their name or their call sign or whatever. How do you do that? Okay, so like I said, this is a bit above and beyond, but we're going to do it because I think it's a really useful thing. It's a nice way to make this a bit more of a polished setup. So let's go ahead and come down to our call list, Astro call list 1. We're going to open that up. And it says list 1. We can go ahead and leave it at list 1 and go into your list, the list tab up here. Okay, so remember how we set this radio's individual ID to 1212? Okay, well, the other radios that you're going to program are going to have different individual IDs. If you're on a repeater that has a bunch of different radios that you haven't programmed, this feature may break depending on, you know, the brand of radio, how they have it programmed. They might not have this set up correctly on there, and really all you need is their their individual ID. And if you're observant enough, as they're transmitting and you see their ID show up on your radio, you can record that number, just write it down on something, and then come back in here into your Astro call list and add it in here, and then it will display on your display. So the type, this is going to be an individual. So call ID. Okay, so this is the radio ID of the calling radio. Or the transmitting radio in this case. So ours is 1212. Maybe theirs is 1010. 1010. Okay. So what do we want it to display? Let's just say N0 ZFG. Okay. So whenever radio 1010 transmits on our display in our vehicle, it will show N0 ZFG. Simple enough, right? That's all there is to it. Like I said, you're just going to keep recording those individual call IDs and adding them to this list as needed, changing the call ID text. That way, whenever they transmit, you'll see who's calling. And I think that makes it just a much more polished way to do it, right? It's easy to look down at your display, see the call sign or name or whatever, and know who's talking to you. Now, as far as FCC regs on this, if you are transmitting an ID, but you are not transmitting your call sign. Now, I've heard arguments that says if you have this set up, you don't need to ID every 10 minutes or at the end of a transmission. I would disagree with that in amateur radio, especially like this, because the radio itself is not transmitting your call sign. It is only transmitting your individual ID, right? So these four numbers, or 1212 in this case, is going to be transmitting. The only time this call sign comes into play is when you program this into your contact list, and this is only stored in your radio. It isn't stored in everybody else's radio. And like I said, you can have whatever text here you want. You can have Robert in here, for instance. You could have a unit number or whatever. You can put whatever you want in here. But this specific string of characters is not what's transmitted. This is what's transmitted. So as far as I'm concerned, that does not meet the requirements of IDing. So you should still ID as per the FCC regulations. So there you have it. I know there's some other digital modes, like the System Fusion, I think, that actually transmit your call sign, so you kind of get around some of that. But I mean, honestly, how long does it take? How hard is it to just identify yourself on the air? So anyway, that's all there is to it. Like I said, go ahead and save this with a different file name so you don't overwrite anything. Write it to your radio and have a blast with it. I hope this was helpful. Oh, your scan list. Yeah, you would just go ahead. I mean, it's easy. You just go, your scan list, whatever scan list you want. You're just going to make sure that your channel, come into your list, you'd add your channel here, right? That's all there is to it. You'd add this channel left. You can mix analog and digital channels. Easy. Okay. I think that's it. I think this should get you on the air in a digital mode with a nice polished display when someone's transmitting, if you have their ID. Fantastic. P25 is an absolute blast. You're really going to enjoy it. I know I do, especially when you get to, when you're working with a repeater that's also P25. It's pretty cool. I know in my I run a repeater that has a central transmitting site. We got a bunch of voting receivers that's P25, and then I'm also working on a simulcast system as well, so that should be fun. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. If it was, go ahead and then click that like button, drop a comment if you thought it was useful. Any questions you might have. I'm always happy to help. I would suggest, however, though, go ahead and check out that the help function in CPS. Like I said, Motorola put in a lot of effort into making this help function extremely helpful, as it should be. So check that out. You're likely going to learn things in there that even I don't know. Like I said, I don't know everything. I'm by no means a professional with these. I've just screwed around with them long enough to be able to make them do some interesting things. So anyway, I'm rambling. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you next time. N0ZFG out.